Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take your curiosity, your sources, and really try to turn them into some illuminating insights. And today we're embarking on, well, a really fascinating journey, I think, into a pivotal era of discovery, exploring how these ingenious new tools began to completely dismantle an ancient way of understanding the world. So our mission today is really to unpack that moment when human eyes, with help from these revolutionary devices, started looking deeper
Yeah.
and smaller, much smaller than ever before, revealing a reality just profoundly different from what our ancestors perceived. And we'll see how this shift started chipping away at, well, something called the doctrine of signatures.
Right.
You know, that old idea
Yeah.
that things in nature held visual clues about their purpose, like walnut looks like a brain, so.
So it must be good for the brain.
Right.
Exactly. That's the core idea. Yeah. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how these discoveries, they didn't just add new facts, like pieces to an existing puzzle. They fundamentally changed the scale, the whole scale at which nature was understood, which basically made those old concepts, well, largely irrelevant. It wasn't just about finding new answers. It was about asking completely different questions.
Okay, right. So let's peel back those layers then. Let's discover the tools, the breakthroughs that really opened up this invisible realm and, well, forever altered how we see ourselves in the natural world.
Mhm.
So thinking back for centuries, right? Medical understanding of the body, it was pretty much locked into ancient texts,
Yeah.
especially Galen,
Galen. Very influential.
who kind of ironically mostly dissected animals, not humans, which seems like a pretty big flaw now.
It was, looking back, a necessary step maybe, but limited.
So what finally cracked that open? Was there like a single moment or a figure who really pushed things forward?
Oh, absolutely. The 16th century, that's when things really kicked off, a revolutionary change. And that's where Andreas Vesalius comes in.
Vesalius, right. I've heard the name.
Yeah, a whole new breed of anatomist. His work, De Humani Corporis Fabrica.
On the fabric of the human body.
Exactly. Published 1543. It was just monumental. A game changer. He meticulously dissected human cadavers. Actually did the work himself.
In public, sometimes. I read that somewhere.
Often in public demonstrations, yeah. And created these incredibly detailed, accurate drawings, finally showing what was really inside us.
Wow, that's a huge shift. I mean, from just reading old books, possibly based on animal anatomy. So how much did actually seeing inside the human body, how much did that just, well, blow apart that whole doctrine of signatures idea? You know, the idea that the shape told you something useful about healing.
Oh, it was a profound blow. Absolutely. Because when people finally peered inside, actually looked, they didn't see, plant shapes mirroring organs or anything like
Yeah,
that.
right. No little kidney bean shapes inside the kidney.
Exactly. What they saw was this incredibly complex, almost like a machine, right? Self-regulating. Muscles, bones, nerves, intricate organs. So it makes you ask, how could a superficial kidney bean shape really explain the actual kidney with its complex filtration system and all its tissues?
Yeah, the connection just breaks down completely at that point.
Completely. The internal reality, with the dissecting knife revealed.
Yeah.
It just utterly discredited that notion. That outward resemblance held the key to function or healing. The real beauty, the understanding, it was now clearly in that engineered complexity inside.
Okay, so dissection reveals this incredible complexity inside us, changes anatomy. But then another invention comes along and starts shrinking things down even further, right? Revealing stuff nobody could have even imagined before. Tell me about those first glimpses into this truly invisible world.
Right, that's where the microscope comes in. A simple device, really just lenses, but revolutionary. It just opened up this whole universe you couldn't see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
You had Robert Hooke, an English polymath, very curious guy.
Micrographia, that was his book.
Micrographia, exactly. 1665. Famous book, beautiful drawings too. He looked at fleas, flies, everyday things made extraordinary. And famously, cork. He saw its structure, these little box-like compartments, and coined the term cell.
Ah, the origin of cell. From Hooke looking at cork.
Yes, that's where it starts. But then you have Antony van Leeuwenhoek.
Leeuwenhoek, how do you spell that? Doesn't matter, carry on.
He was a Dutch draper, actually. Not a trained scientist in the way we think of it now.
Wait, a draper? Selling clocks, seriously?
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he was obsessed with grinding lenses.
Yeah.
Made his own microscopes. And he developed techniques to make them even more powerful than Hooke's. Really high magnification for the time.
Okay, a draper with these super-powered, well, lenses, I guess. Ground them himself.
Yeah.
So what did he see with them? What did he turn them on?
Well, pretty much everything he could get his hands on. He used them to observe what he called animalcules.
Animalcules. Like tiny animals.
Little animals, basically, that's what it means. What we now know are bacteria, protozoa, microscopic life. He found them in pond water, rainwater, blood, scrapings from his own teeth.
Wow. In dental plaque, he saw bacteria from his own mouth.
Yep. Imagine looking at a drop of seemingly clear pond water and seeing these things swimming around, living for the very first time in human history.
It must have been mind-blowing, like discovering aliens in your backyard, yeah?
Exactly. He was the first to see single-celled organisms, the very first, undisputed. And he also described red blood cells, sperm cells too, things fundamental to biology.
Wow. Okay, so Leuwenhoek is seeing actual living things no human had ever seen before. What was the reaction to this? I mean, to these animalcules? Was it just wonder? Or fear? Disbelief, maybe?
Oh, I think it was a mix, definitely. There was immense curiosity from the scientific community, like the Royal Society in London, but fundamentally, it was a huge shock to the system.
A huge shift in perspective.
A true paradigm shift, absolutely, because it suddenly became clear, or at least plausible, that maybe diseases, maybe they were caused by these tiny, unseen living things.
Not by, cosmic imbalances or bad air or God's displeasure.
Exactly, not by sympathetic influence or signatures matching plants to ailments. The focus for understanding disease, for finding cures, it shifted dramatically away from how a plant looked, its visible signature,
Right. The macroscopic view.
and towards these minute, unseen mechanisms within the body, within the world, these invisible agents. The whole scale of understanding nature just changed, fundamentally. And at that new microscopic scale, well, the idea of signatures just didn't make much sense anymore. It became sort of irrelevant to this new way of investigating.
Okay, so while all this is happening with anatomy, with microscopes,
Yeah.
you've also got chemistry starting to bubble up, right? As a distinct field.
Yes, concurrently. These things are all interwoven in the 17th century especially.
Beginning to unravel, well, the very composition of matter itself, what things are made of. And this gave people a direct, quantifiable alternative, didn't it?
Right. Measurable results.
To those older ideas like alchemy trying to turn lead into gold, or what were they called? Humoral understandings.
Ah, yes. The theory of the four humors.
Could you just quickly remind us what that was about? It sounds sort of damp.
Huh. Well, it was about fluids. The humoral theory, it's this ancient Greek idea, really influential for centuries. The idea was that the body's health depended on a balance of four basic fluids, or humors. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile.
Okay, so health was about balance.
Exactly. And illness was an imbalance. Treatments often involved trying to rebalance them, like bloodletting to reduce excess blood. It was a very sort of macroscopic, qualitative way of thinking about health, based on observation of these fluids and temperaments.
Got it. And chemistry started to challenge that directly.
Chemistry started offering a different way to understand substances, including those in the body or used as medicine. You have figures like Robert Boyle.
The Skeptical Chemist. Heard of that one?
That's the one. Published in 1661. He was deeply skeptical, as the title suggests. He wasn't just challenging the sort of mystical goals of alchemy. He even questioned the foundational ancient Greek ideas about elements, earth, air, fire, water, being the fundamental building blocks. He advocated for a much more rigorous experimental approach, trying to break substances down, understand their fundamental particles or components.
Okay, so Boyle and others are pushing for this experimental analytical chemistry. What's the impact here? For our main story, the doctrine of signatures, how did this new chemical thinking challenge that specific idea?
Well, it led directly, maybe not instantly, but logically, to the idea of systematically isolating active ingredients from medicinal plants.
Ah, okay. Finding the actual thing that works.
Exactly. See, it wasn't enough anymore to say, oh, this plant works because it looks like a liver or because of a signature or some inherent spirit or virtue. Now, scientists started looking for the specific chemical, the measurable compound or compounds responsible for the plant's effects.
The actual molecule doing the heavy lifting.
Precisely. And later on, this chemical approach led to huge medical breakthroughs. Think about isolating morphine from the opium poppy in the early 19th century.
Right, a specific painkiller.
Or quinine from cinchona bark for malaria.
A specific anti-malarial.
Digoxin from the foxglove plant for heart conditions.
It's a specific heart medicine, right, still used.
Exactly. And these discoveries, they were just undeniable proof. Hard evidence. Proof that a plant's medicinal efficacy wasn't primarily in its overall shape, its color, its signature. It was in the precise chemical structure of a specific molecule or set of molecules within it.
So the proof was in the test tube, in the isolation and testing, not just in the appearance.
You could absolutely say that. The medicinal virtue was found in the lab, through chemical analysis and testing, not just by observing the plant in the garden. It was a direct, really irrefutable challenge to the whole foundation of the doctrine of signatures.
So, okay, let's pull back a bit. Again, big picture time. We've got anatomical revelations, the microscopic world opening up, and this new analytical chemistry, all these revolutions happening, overlapping. What's the cumulative effect? You described it earlier as profound,
It really was a fundamental shift in worldview.
leading to this gradual demystification of nature. Is that fair to say? How did that fundamentally change our relationship, our human relationship with the world around us?
The change was, well, dramatic is a good word for it, transformative.
Huh.
The universe, nature. It largely stopped being seen as like a living text filled with symbols and meanings, something imbued with a world soul, perhaps.
Or speaking directly through divine
Or
signatures.
speaking through signatures, exactly.
Yeah.
That view began to fade. Instead, nature increasingly became seen as, well, an object of study, a vast, intricate machine complex, yes, but ultimately understandable through analysis, a machine to be analyzed, dissected, measured,
And ultimately controlled or manipulated.
and ultimately controlled or manipulated. Yes, that was a major consequence. Those animistic qualities, that ancient feeling that, spirits or vital forces lived in trees and stones and rivers.
That faded away for many.
It receded, yeah. The poetic interpretations, the symbolic meanings that were once paramount, they faded too, or became secondary to scientific explanation. And that sense of inherent sacred meaning in creation, it tended to get replaced by something much more objective, quantifiable, and, well, as some saw it then and now, it felt like a colder, perhaps even a dead view of the natural world compared to the older, more enchanted view.
That phrase, a dead view of nature, that's pretty powerful. Stark, even. But wasn't there also a huge gain alongside that potential loss? A sense of empowerment.
Oh, definitely. It's crucial to see both sides.
I mean, a new ability to understand and control disease, to harness natural resources, to build technologies, even if it meant losing some of that poetic connection or sense of enchantment.
Absolutely right. This new scientific perspective, this analytical gaze, it brought unprecedented power, no question about it. Power over disease, understanding physiology, manipulating the environment, huge tangible gains for humanity in many ways. But yes, as you say, it arguably came at a cost.
Which was, in essence,
Well, perhaps that intimate, maybe intuitive, symbolic relationship that we imagine our ancestors had with nature, that was largely severed for many people in the emerging modern world, replaced by this more detached, analytical, objective gaze.
the observer standing apart from the observed.
Something like that. The vibrant, whispering cosmos of signatures. It kind of fell silent in the face of this new approach. Its secrets wouldn't yield to intuition or analogy anymore, only to the rigorous demands, the measurements and experiments of this burgeoning scientific method. There's that quote you mentioned earlier, attributed to an ancient observer, maybe apocryphal but evocative.
Yeah, the one about the instruments.
That's it. Something like, they saw the gears and levers, the cells and compounds, and declared the spirit gone. But the song was merely too soft for their new, loud instruments.
Wow. That puts a fine point on the potential loss, doesn't it? It really makes you wonder, think about that walnut again. We keep coming back to it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good example.
Traditionally, it's a signature for the brain because the shape, the folds, right?
Right, the visual analogy is strong.
But now, imagine its microscopic reality, what chemistry tells us. The intricate cells, the organelles inside those cells, the specific fatty acids, the proteins, the chemical compounds that actually make it up. What kind of meaning or maybe purpose can you really derive from that reality, the invisible microscopic chemical one, compared to the immediate symbolic meaning you get just from looking at its macroscopic shape?
It's a different kind of meaning altogether, isn't it? One is symbolic, analogical, intuitive. The other is analytical, compositional, functional, in a biochemical sense.
Yeah, and it really forces you to consider the trade-offs involved in that shift. What's the gain? I mean, the precision, the efficacy in understanding nutrition or medicine, that power we talked about, knowing why walnuts might be good for brain health on a chemical level.
Huge gains in practical knowledge.
Huge gains. And then what's the potential loss? Is it that poetic connection? The intuitive understanding? Maybe a sense of participation in a living, meaningful cosmos? Especially when knowledge shifts so fundamentally, from relying on the visible, the intuitive, the analogical level, down to the invisible, the analytical, the measurable one. So, thinking about all this, what stands out to you? When you consider this really profound shift in how we, as humans, came to understand the natural world, What did we gain? Obviously, a lot in terms of science and medicine. And what did we perhaps lose along the way? When we started to look so very, very closely at everything, breaking it down into its smallest parts, definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.